So today I wanted to talk about one of the most underrated lenses for the Sony platform. It's a full frame lens, and not a lot of people know about it, but you're going to get so much quality packed in such a great price, and I think it's probably the perfect vlogging lens too. Let's dive in. Okay, so if you guys haven't guessed it already, I am talking about the Sony 20mm G lens, not the G Master, G lens. It has an aperture of 1.8. This is an incredible lens that was released, I don't know, about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. It's not a G Master, so you're not going to get the ultimate weatherproofing. But at the price point, I remember I was really excited about it, but I waited, and then on Amazon, I think they had it, I want to say $6.99. I mean, I can look it up, but I think it was $6.99 or $5.99, something like that. And I've seen it hovering around that price, you know, throughout the year, especially when Sony does their Prime discounts, which Prime is coming up real soon on Amazon. So let's talk about the 20mm on a full frame lens. I wanted to talk about this lens because I don't think a lot of people know about it. And 20mm is a unique focal length. It offers quite a bit. I think when people see this lens, they automatically assume, oh, this is just a vlogging lens and I'm not going to have any, need for it. But 20mm is actually used quite a bit in Hollywood. Steven Spielberg is famously known for using a 20mm often. I know a 35 and a 50mm usually have a bit more popularity value over a 20mm. And recently the 24, the 24 G Master has exploded in popularity, but don't knock the 20mm. So what can you use this lens for? Of course you can use it for B-roll. It offers a very unique perspective, and I'm going to show you guys some B-roll clips over the years using this lens later on in a video. But it's also really well for vlogging. I mean, vlogging is kind of a given. Vlogging with this lens is a dream on a full frame. It gives you just enough of that field of view while keeping you in the frame, and also letting your viewers kind of see your background a little bit more without being way too wide. I don't really like the ultra wide fisheye look when vlogging, and I don't like the 24mm. I think, you have to really extend out when you're holding it, and it kind of looks a bit different. It's beautiful, and I think the 24mm has, its features that make it really, really nice. But for vlogging, the 20mm for me is like the perfect sweet spot. On top of all that, I've been using it lately for my talking heads. It gives this beautiful, beautiful look, especially when I have it on the 1.8 aperture. It just gives off this like very unique look. I've fallen in love with this all over again. I've been using it again for my other YouTube channel. If you guys are interested, I have a cooking channel where I go over cooking gear and learning how to cook and fundamentals of cooking and all that good stuff. But check that out. I've been recently using it as my talking head lens, and it just gives this really nice aspect ratio. It's hard to describe. And then it has all of the latest features that Sony has been jam-packing under higher end lenses, the G Master lenses, the last couple years or so. For example, you have the declickable aperture ring, and of course you have your functions button. You can assign that to whatever you want. You have your autofocus switch on and off. You have your focus ring, which is smooth. Love the pull of the focus ring. And then it also comes with the hood. So it has that updated design. I gotta be honest with you guys, I'm really, really surprised that Sony hasn't been releasing more G lenses of this caliber, of this value. I was really expecting them to release a G35 1.8 or maybe a G24 1.8 or whatever in this form factor, right? And they never did. They did come out with those pancake lenses, which were cool, but this is a gem. I really think Sony messed up. They probably released this and went, oh wow, this is a really good value. It's going to give a lot of people pause, right, in considering or upgrading to the G Master. versions of this lens. So I think what happens is, or I think what happened is Sony probably realized like, well, if we release a 35mm version of this or a 24, it's going to cannibalize our G Master lenses. And I completely get that. And I think you guys should jump on this before Sony realizes what they've done. Okay, so we've already kind of talked about the build quality, the cost, and the features of this lens, but I wanted to touch up on a couple of other things. I wanted to talk about the autofocus, the overall image quality, bokeh, and just my personal opinions on why this should be in your arsenal. And of course, we'll do some B-roll later on, like I mentioned. So right now I'm going to switch over. I've been using the Pocket 3. Also keep in mind that the Pocket 3 has this wide angle adapter that you can put on the lens, which gives you, ironically, a 20mm focal length, full frame focal length equivalent. So even DJI thought that the 20mm would be a really good vlogging companion lens. So anyways, let's switch over to the Sony and I'll show you what it looks like using this lens for the remainder of this talking head. Okay, and now we switched over to the Sony 20mm G lens 1.8, and I actually have the aperture set at 1.8. This is the perfect vlogging setup. I have the Sony digital mic, I am using my switch pod, and I have the 20mm on here. This is fantastic. This is like 90% of the time when I'm doing my vlogs and when I'm doing now my talking heads, I prefer this setup. It's easy just to grab it and go. All lenses compress you in a certain way or decompress you in a certain way, can make you look different or can make you look more flattering. And the 20mm and the 24, I think, make me look the most flattering in this setup, right? When it's kind of run and gun and you need to deal with the elements that are around you. My talking heads inside, when I have my lighting controlled, I prefer a 35mm. So to give you guys an example where this lens kind of sits, and this is one of the things I want to talk about when it comes to focal length. The 20mm, the 24, the 35, and the 50 are probably my favorite sets of lens. The 24 is very cinematic. The 24 can give you this very cool, like, documentary feel. I like the 24 when you push up on people a little bit, get a little close, and kind of get their facial reactions. The 35, I think, is the sweet spot. The 35 gives this very cinematic look. You can punch in a little bit closer. Most 35s have a pretty good, minimum distance. So you can get kind of like a up close personal, a little bit of a macro feel look to them, but you can also push away and get that wide angle. I also think the 35 gives a nice compression look to things. And when you have like a 1.8, 1.4 and so forth, the bokeh, the background blur really works really, really well. As a prime lens, the 35 is one of my favorites to use. And if I am going blind into a shoot and I can only have one lens, the 35 would be it. The 50, I know you guys have heard this, the 50 is the most equivalent to the human eye. 50 definitely has a very cinematic look, definitely gives you more blur, background blur, has great bokeh. A 50 is a great lens. I use a 50 when I really want to get that like film Hollywood look. So that's how I see all the lenses. And then of course you have like an 85 and all that, but I don't want to make this video too long. So the 20, that's where it sits in my arsenal. And that may be equivalent to, I'm sharing this just to kind of give you perspectives. It may not be very important to you. You may not care. You might think the 20 is just not needed because you have the 24 and so forth. But if you are a filmmaker, for the cost, this is brilliant. Okay, now let's move on to the other things. I want to talk about autofocus. I think autofocus is probably going to be one of the most important things to most of you, and focus breathing. So we'll cover both of them at the same time. Autofocus is fantastic. It's a native Sony lens, so you can expect it to stick like glue. Right now, the A7S III is tracking me, and the G lens has no problems keeping me in frame. I mean, this is a talking head, but like if I get out of the way, I come back, it's getting me. It's sticking like glue. Yeah, it's sticking like glue. So autofocus isn't an issue. You're going to get great autofocus. There is some focus breathing. It's very, very minor, but sometimes, I notice it sometimes. Let me see if I can kind of get it to do that. We'll do some tests right now on some flowers or something just to show you how the focus breathing looks like. There is some. It's very, very minor. When I am shooting B-roll, I can easily compensate for that. Like you can, it's not bad. It's not like the 35 1.4. The 35 1.4 had horrible focus breathing, in my opinion, compared to the 1.8. And I think with this lens, and now with the Sony having the update where you can add in focus breathing compensation, it's like, it's not an issue at all. So autofocus is great. Focus breathing is very manageable. There's very little of it. And I think for video work, most of you are not going to care. So now let's talk about the image quality itself. It's not the sharpest lens, but it's not the dullest lens. I don't know how to describe that. It's plenty sharp enough, but if you are like a lens sharpness crazy person, I don't know. If lens sharpness is very important to you, then you may not like this lens as much as you would for, you know, maybe like another lens. I'll give you an example. The 35 1.4 is notorious for being an extremely sharp lens, especially compared to the 1.8 35. So this is better than the 1.8 35 in my opinion. It's sharper than that lens. So that should kind of give you an idea. If you've ever used the 35 1.8 and you went, oh man, this is terrible, I don't like how dull this lens looks. Well, the 20 is sharper than that. Considerably sharper in my opinion, but not as sharp as the 35 1.4. Let's talk about background blur. At 1.8, this is the type of background blur you can expect, for example, when doing a talking head or vlogging. This is basically it. When doing like B-roll, cinematic B-roll, you still get pretty good background blur. I mean, it looks really good for what it is. It is a wide angle lens, and the wider that you go, the less the background blur is as noticeable or pronounced. 1.8 is a pretty good sweet spot. Again, cost to benefit ratio. I think if they would have went 1.4, this would have been a lot more pricier. Bokeh's pretty nice too. It's not like amazing, right? Like the 35 1.8 or the 35 1.4 produces much more flattering or noticeable bokeh, but it's still really good considering it's a 20mm. And if you're looking for that cinematic bokeh look, especially if you're shooting some lights, nighttime things, you know, you're going to get great bokeh balls. I mean, I guess that's what they're called. It sounds weird saying it, but you're gonna get great bokeh balls. It's gonna look very flattering. It's still gonna give you a very cinematic look. All right, so now let's talk about some B-roll. I'm just gonna show you guys some things that I've shot with it over the years. Hope you guys enjoy the B-roll. I really hope that kind of gave you guys an idea of what to expect with this lens, and I really hope this video helped you guys out in figuring out if this is the right lens for you. I am very happy with this lens. It's one of my favorite lenses. This lens and the 35 are my favorite prime lenses. I have the old 35 1.8. And then another favorite lens of mine, which we'll get into later, but it's not a prime, is my Sigma 24 to 70. That one's just a beautiful lens as well. So this is a great lens. I do not regret buying this lens at all. I'm using it more and more each and every day. And I think if you're considering it, consider it before Sony figures out that it's actually worth a lot more than what they're selling it for. That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative. And if you did, please consider subscribing and joining our channel membership so we can continue making videos like this one. I'll catch you in the next video. Take care, everybody.